And I'm gonna put shit to work, so.
Oh, good.
I do a segment on storytelling. Anybody here like telling stories, want to learn more about stories? Is that cool? We got permission? Okay, good. So with storytelling, why do we do that as speakers? What's important about storytelling as speakers?
People can remember.
What's that?
Engages folks. It engages.
Engages folks?
They remember.
They
your
remember.
Relate.
What's that?
They relate.
They relate,
Yeah.
absolutely. They get to know you as a human being. They remember your points better than they do the bullet points. So stories are important. I don't have to tell you guys that. You know that already. So, does everybody have a story file? Raise your hand if you have a story file. Yes, we're gonna start your story file today. So I'm one of those speakers that when I've got some topics that I want to talk about, that I go, oh, what story can I possibly tell? You know, and when I'm trying to find a point and I want a story to make the point, I have the worst time finding it. So a story file can help you with that. So as you go through the content you want to get across, if you have the story file, you don't have to come up with it off the top of your head. You can go back to your story file and go, oh yeah, that story would make that point for me. So we're going to start, this little piece of paper can be your start of your story file. In the middle there's a place to put the stories you already tell. So let's just take a couple minutes, jot a few lines down, the stories you're already telling in your speeches, or think of stories that you tell at the family gathering. We always tell the story about how my mom and dad met. I love to tell the story about how my husband and I met. So are there stories you're already telling? Maybe you're not using them in speeches yet, but write down a few words of stories you already tell. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to do something that I call the personal story generator. And it's inspired by something written by and delivered by Max Dixon, who's a brilliant man in the world, and his contact information is at the bottom of my sheet. But it will help us uncover a few more of our own stories. So trust me, it seems strange at first, but there is method to the madness here. So at the bottom of the page there, you see where it says your roles? Go ahead and start thinking about the different roles you've played in your life. So maybe start with family relations and roles. Mother, son, middle child, the black sheep of the family. The goal here is quantity, not necessarily quality. Now think of roles you played in your childhood. Little leaguer, Girl Scout cookie seller, class clown. Think of roles related to school. Yearbook editor, cheerleader, social director at the dorm floor. Think of roles related to work. Maybe it's some of your job titles. Maybe it's the fact that you were the coffee pot maker. You're the person that made the coffee first thing in the morning. The donut purchaser. Think of roles that you play at home. Maybe you're the grocery shopper or the bill payer.
I just want to know what's going on in your mind.
The garbage taker outer.
You nailed all of my roles.
think of roles they play in outside interest. Maybe it's your hobby, photographer, cosplayer. Is that how they say that?
Who player?
Was that cosplay?
Costume play?
Cos.
That's short.
No, Dragon Con, Con.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dragon
Like to dress up in
Yes,
costumes.
but I have never done that.
Motorcyclist.
Oh, that was the other thing I meant to say.
I got
It's a
it
biker
in
chick.
there somewhere. I am a biker chick. Other roles, maybe a church or house of worship, Sunday school teacher, or any roles that don't fit neatly into a box. Okay, so we've got a bunch of roles listed there now. Now what I'd like you to do is randomly choose 3 of those roles. So you close your eyes, wiggle your finger, and
Oh, Lord.
randomly choose and circle 3 of those roles. All right, now turn the page over. At the top of the page, you'll see several words. Do the same thing. Close your eyes, wiggle your finger, and randomly choose 3 of those words. What you're going to do next is you're going to take one of those roles you circled on the first page, and you're going to pair it up with one of the words you circled on the back page. And then you're going to write that word pair together. So it might be motorcyclist, connection, mother, and change.
Do we get to choose how we pair them? Is that?
Do it randomly. Just do it randomly. It works well when you do it randomly.
Oh, that worked out.
I just find it hysterical that I chose these particular roles.
I'm very intrigued.
All right, so
You should be.
what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna ask everybody to pair up. So get a partner. You guys will get closer together, you two. And in a moment, I want you to the first thing I want you to do is to share your 3 word pairs. You're not gonna tell any stories yet, but you're gonna just share your 3 word pairs. So Patricia, if you and Kevin would. And share your word pairs, and then your partner is going to pick the one they think is most interesting to them. So if Richard and I were partners, he tells me his 3, I say, oh, that's the second one, that sounds most interesting, all right? So your partner picks one of the 3. That sounds most interesting. So go ahead and do that now. Don't tell any stories, just do the picking.
Okay. Right here. You read mine, I'll read yours.
Discovering early child influence and teacher.
Great.
I like this one.
I like,
Oh, man, I knew that was gonna happen. No.
All right.
oldest child, inmate conflict, executive turning point.
Oh, I gotta hear about the inmate.
All right, so everybody's got a pair to pick out. In a moment, I'm going to let you tell stories to each other using a structure that we call what do we call it? The hero's journey. Yeah, that's right, that's it. Hero's journey. Now, there's many different ways that people define the hero's journey. We're going to go ahead and define it in particular ways here. So there's a spot on your worksheet where you can write this down. So the first step of the hero's journey is the quest. So that's the goal that you have to do your journey, right? So let me take a step back from that. As you looked at these 3 word pairs, as your partner picked their favorite of the 3, did something come to mind, a specific incident related to that role and to that trigger word that you circled? Did something come to mind? All right.
Kinda.
All right. So
Story in it.
try to think some specific things
All right.
as you're thinking about this. this.
Use the words parent, think of specific things that relate to that parent.
Right, that's something that maybe popped in your head when you heard that word spoken with that role. Something that pops in your head. All right, so the first part of the hero's journey was the quest. The second part of the hero's journey is obstacles. Obstacles.
So the quest is the connecting the two things?
Sorry, no, I just forgot to say that earlier. So I
Okay, so
was
what's-
trying to distract you from the fact
It's kind of a goal or objective.
So the first part of the quest, the first part of the hero's journey is always the quest, the goal or whatever. So if you
Yeah.
think about the
Fill the
movies you've
dragon.
seen,
Yeah.
if you think about, the ring, what's the Lord of the Rings
Star
one,
Wars.
right? There's all kinds of them, right? What is the thing that they're going after? What is the thing they're going after? And then, as a good story has got some kind of obstacle that comes in the way. So that's number 2 in the hero's journey is obstacles. So the hero goes on some kind of quest, he runs into some kind of obstacles that keeps him from getting that goal that he's going after. And then the third part of the hero's journey is the resolution. There's some way that the hero figures out how to get around or through the obstacle to get towards that quest that they originally were on. And then the fourth part of the hero's journey is new wisdom. New wisdom. So as a result of going on this journey, the hero has developed some new wisdom along the way. And the next part is that there's some kind of a universal truth that comes out of that. So you see, what's the point, universal truth? So even though the hero went on that particular quest and had these experiences and got this new wisdom, there is something that the rest of us can learn from having watched their story. And that's the universal truth. So when we're telling our stories as a speaker, we're doing it to make a point. And that point is something that we can then make that universal truth for our audience to grasp the reason why we're telling a story and to whatever we're trying to help them see is more important. So we're going to have you do that in pairs in just a moment using this framework to tell your story. But I want to use an example up here first before you do it in your group. So can I have a volunteer to come and share? Okay, so Lauren Kay, if you will come up here with me. Let's see how we're doing.
Who made her hand go off?
Give her a hand, give her a hand. All right, so grab your paper real quick.
I don't know why your hand went off.
All right, so you had 3. Give us the 2 that Pam did not choose.
Decision and soccer player, and loss Airbnb manager.
Okay, which of those 2 sounds most interesting to us?
Soccer player.
Soccer player, loss.
Airbnb.
I was thinking the B in the Airbnb
Airbnb.
manager one. Okay, all right.
Okay.
So, are you thinking about something specific related to that Airbnb?
Okay,
role
now.
that you had? You do? You got
I could-
you can? Okay. So, what was your quest? What was happening in this particular situation?
I need to make money.
Okay. All right. So you needed to make money,
Make money.
and so what obstacles did you come into with this? So you needed to make money, so you decided to put your house up for
Yeah.
Airbnb. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what obstacles got in the way?
Attracting the right people. And I live in a community, and so I didn't want to bring in people that were going to have a big party and upset the community.
Okay.
So that was an obstacle, and just I think reading people's profiles and getting a feel for who they are.
Okay. And were there other obstacles that were getting in the way of successfully getting this, using the Airbnb and
Always the price point is always like, what's the right price?
Okay.
Get that settled in.
Okay. And so, how did you overcome those obstacles?
Price point, I just threw a price out there based on what other people were doing in my complex, and just see how it went, and then adjusted appropriately.
Okay.
And as time got closer, I would lower the price down. So
Okay.
so, yeah.
All right. And then, and as far as getting the right tenants in and stuff, how did you work through that?
I had anybody under 21, I was a little nervous about if they if there was some inconsistencies in their profile, I felt like, well, it doesn't feel very open and authentic, like they're not giving me all the information, so that didn't feel right, so that would be someone I would say no to,
Okay.
even though I really want their $500.
Gotcha. And so, what was the new wisdom you took away from the whole experience?
Well, the balance of money and integrity, that integrity will win.
Oh,
wow.
interesting. And so, is there some universal truth that you think the rest of us can take away from that particular situation?
I think being in integrity and being, and my integrity in this was not to upset my neighbors, to make money without disturbing the entire block, and attracting the right people to my space. So being in integrity with what my wants were, I was able to release people that weren't the right, even though letting go of the fear of not having money and releasing that kept me in integrity, and therefore the right things showed up for me.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Very nice. Thank you
Wow.
very much.
Okay, I have to go to the bathroom.
All right.
That's really good. That's really good, okay.
Thank you.
Way to go, partner.
Resolution with the rating, in terms of what comes in mind.
So what you're gonna do in your pairs is you're gonna just do what I just did with Lori Kay. You're gonna say, all right, think of a specific thing, what was your quest? And you don't have to necessarily know what the answers are until the people are asking you the questions and you're talking through it. Lori Kay didn't know what she was gonna say for her new wisdom until I asked her, right? She didn't know what she was gonna say until, with the universal truth, until she thought a minute. So let me ask her one more question before we, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So before you get in your groups, there's one more point I'd like to make. When that few second pause between when she told us her new wisdom and the universal truth, did anybody think of something else besides what Lori said?
I didn't.
Huh?
I didn't.
What did you think?
I said I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. You didn't.
I was thinking she was gonna say something about learning about the character of people. Because you went through a lot of profiles, what they said, then you ended up meeting them, and if that matched or not, like the, I don't know, character. of people
Yeah, yeah,
was kind of what was on,
Yeah.
that's where I thought you were gonna go with it.
Yeah. I thought about your neighbors must be very important to you. And so that the relationship with your neighbors was more important than the money maybe was part of it. So the point being that we can hear the same story and come up with different points. So even though as you're telling your stories today, you might come up with a particular point, when you go back through your story file later, you might think, you know what, I could also make this point with this story. So, because great stories can make multiple points. All right, so go ahead and your pairs and work and go through it using this hero's journey question.
Alright, so.
All right, so we're gonna go. Oh, you did? Okay.
Okay, good question. Oh, you're just talking about this
Here's
one?
my class.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to talk about
Yeah.
my question?
Well, yeah.
Yep, okay. So the quest is get rid
And learning how
of the
to.
garbage
Right,
business.
so,
Okay.
and now,
Okay.
just understand, I speak about that next question.
Tell your story.
Okay.
Talking about
And what
my
obstacles
core
do you
message,
encounter?
how small,
So that's kind of.
That's my goal, that's why. Wow.
It's never ending.
Where's the things you have
Okay,
to do?
so,
What are they gonna say? So.
Yeah, you should be your paper.
I did actually, I wrote it somewhere else.
Overstuffed garbage bags.
So that's really.
And what's your resolution, Brett? Yeah.
I'm kind of expert in
Ah,
Hero's Journey.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes,
And ordinary life, so I started with ordinary life.
Okay, all right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, that's okay, that could be one of the resolutions. So resolution was why we go to
I do have three blank copies.
You know, I have left that far on one side, so we'll go back. Football player challenge.
So it was.
But that was
Supposed to win
really
games, so I left it. Great, we lost every
And then
game.
it cost me.
I don't have to feed you either.
Before that, it was kind of, yeah.
Is there any other,
Seven,
The opposite.
like, we, every champions all lost.
You're paying attention.
Like, we lost, we didn't do too well. So,
So what was your journal? What was your goal?
to win games.
and what did you, what was the resolution?
At least to win.
Oh,
At that level.
Relationships.
But the obstacle, like,
Just try
our
to
club,
see
like,
how
we're coaching
it's
for 5 years,
everything
we're
else.
goes down the street, for 20 years, that was in high school.
How to get along.
Without some
The coaches we had when I was in 17th grade, they were very.
Oh, that's interesting. So, wait, that's something interesting, we put that over in your
Fantastic.
mailbox.
You know,
Say,
my coach thought I'd become all state when I was in 9th grade.
You know,
He
I-
thought I'd-
That
But when I got to high school, I was in.
So, what's your
Except for, even
So the obstacle,
naturally.
probably my realization was that a lot of my good coach, it's really makes a difference. In fact, we're all the same players.
You know, the new wisdom.
It's resolution.
So that's the resolution, so the new list would be,
So that leader knows that the most disappointing part.
The leader, yeah.
The bags out as it goes.
So,
And then finally, what James Campbell said,
So-
when you have an obligation to tell the trust.
I didn't know that.
Once you return from that journey,
Yep,
you
always there.
only
It was
learn
worth the
this
risk.
by the experiences that you have.
And that's where coaches, coaches, like this, they engaged you. They wanted, you wanted to play for that.
This is how we advance our DNA. I mean, kind of, there was a reason why.
take it out before, so it's almost that proactive, take it out before it's there. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah,
I think that sometimes it's
fantastic.
you know, if
I
you
can
want
see how
to
they could
should
work
or
it.
shouldn't.
Although it's a challenge,
Later in my life, it doesn't.
I became a financial advisor at some point.
I love that. So the other thing that comes up for me is,
And so.
and consumption.
Creates
Creates waste.
At the bottom of the wheel.
So consumption creates waste. That's pretty much it. I need to say most about money. Yeah.
Right.
So I became a financial advisor, and as I got there, I realized, you don't know squat about stuff. I mean, so
We have to take this step.
That's what you would get. I
I
like
didn't know anything. So my challenge was really learn to educate myself, so I decided to become a certified financial planner. And that's a real challenging thing to go through. And at the time, I told you I lost everything, so I had no money to go and take the fancy courses and all the things.
She asked me two questions.
So what I did is,
You asked me two questions at the end.
What was the university?
Universal Security.
and I took all the interviews.
I should be doing that. What else? Anything else coming up for your
And I was sitting there and they put us around this conference table. I can't think of people sitting around the conference table, so I was like freaked out, you know, at that point. And so what I did is, I tried to just put my head down and do this, and then on the breaks, everybody would say, what did you think of that question, you know? And blah, blah, blah.
I like
How did
that.
you do this?
Yeah, one way or some interesting stuff there.
And I was saying processes that I used to never heard of.
So the attention
Classes,
phase.
and so I knew all that stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah, I can't even believe I wrote that down.
so
Yeah.
I did tell her to be there, and
That's fantastic. Okay, so,
which is like, maybe only 20% of the people pass. So it was like,
Bring that.
So, well, the question
So
is.
I think that was, the real obstacle there was.
I know.
getting through that whole process. I got that, so that, the
I just think
resolution.
so. And of course,
Um,
even
is
here, when I
that
ask people where the which
You
is,
don't have to
I guess other contestant.
It was
there,
goal was
and
mine.
then
If
there was a
you get
guy,
to that goal, you can accomplish it.
stocking
That what I tell everybody else in my
and,
group,
Right.
you know.
I'm
so
trying to
that's-
think about it
I
from
know,
my
it's-
child's
that's my whole
perspective,
thing.
right?
It's
The
like,
child. So I was like,
some
oh, right,
things that I
yeah.
accomplished as a
I've
child.
been
Nerves, I would stand back and look at where I came from. Single
They didn't
mom,
have
you know,
basically, I'd like,
Yeah,
I was
read
there,
the lines.
my obstacle
But I
was
was
they
able
were,
to
the
jump
flavor
on
wasn't
it.
there, it was probably the last time. Flavor wasn't there, and it was like, and then I was in the middle of Oklahoma, and like, I didn't know that it was an obstacle when it's an observation of the moment.
Go through it, I was like, I'm
Sitting there, watching the awkwardness, yes, sure. They're just, one of their favorite pastimes, really. And so, judgment, I was all about, I was speaking to,
I am reminded,
and what, so I went up and I asked him
Kelly?
about it. And he's, oh, and then he volunteered, and he had this other flavor,
Kelly would.
and other, we had this just back and forth, and I was like, so I heard from behind, so, yeah, money. And so I'm just trying to think of what, you know, your child was against.
I called this guy.
And the other, like, other one was
Had a
to, you know, get a hang of
line,
it.
been for like
So,
20
a
years.
little tidbit, you know,
And,
and so I decided to drink it, like,
yeah. So,
Anyway,
so I did. I did call him that following week, and I called back. You remember that son? He was great.
but I was
Now
a
we
dancer,
called.
so like
I
in
never
my
talked to
bag.
him.
And I part of it.
And then recently I called him and said it's
And it was a
not
couple,
okay.
and I was such a fourth one on it, and this is
Real
the
fast.
the back to get from
I'm
there.
going my speaking career,
And,
crafted and
to
marketing
go around,
program.
and
You know, I just wanted to touch base with you again.
And they're like,
See
so
if
the
you're
other,
doing
the other
to be
contestants,
successful in
I got
marketing
that,
and see if you have a different. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, Kevin, he says,
I
you need to
guess
come up here because there's stuff early. You were coming around and spend a day with me. I'll show you.
yeah, what I learned my supervisor, or the resolution
For
was
you
like,
to, market.
What? I heard you got that. Line.
and it got to,
Because he figures that the only he's trying
He
says, they're not, chances are they're not gonna have two ethnic programs.
I just think I was clear, I mean, I think for me, it's all parts of the
2 years in a row. And the other thing is that somebody who I haven't called, then maybe the fact that you're calling them will take them up a little bit to the level of others. Talk about, and there's only a handful of backgrounds that talk about ethics in the whole United States. So they could be able to do it. So I spent the day, with Chuck, and you walk into his office, and it's a nondescript office, kind of like an office warehouse type thing. His office is like right to the right, market person. The whole rest office is like like 3 different things, and we spent most time talking about video. Well, guess what? I have now opened up my podcast.
yeah, I mean, it was almost.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he gave me a suggestion of something, the other speaker is Zoom. He goes, I'm not gonna do it, but I think they should, because I'm marketing more to associations. So I just started doing
That's
that, yeah.
That's
So I
awesome.
was excited to hear you were doing that, giving
I'm
you
so
that
glad
as
to
for
hear
$5,
that.
yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah,
So it's interesting because the.
Benefit of NSA.
All right, let's go ahead and come back together as a group. So was that helpful to look at a different way, different structure? All right, so I want you to use stories for good and not for evil. So I believe that the people here will do that. So there's a few things, a few points to keep in mind when telling stories. And as a speaker, I think it's super important that your story needs to have a point. Needs to have a point. I was once doing one of these workshops and a guy came up to me afterwards and said, Callie, I really enjoyed the workshop. I used to think I hated stories, but what I realized was my first boss would tell these stories and he never had a point. And that was what drove me crazy, is because
Yeah.
he never had a point. So have a point. The second one, the longer the story, the bigger the payout needs to be. Just like with a long joke, the longer the joke, the bigger the payoff
Payoff.
needs to be. Same with the story. The longer it is, the bigger it needs to pay off. And then use names and other specifics. Use names and other specifics. We don't want to have so much information in there that we overwhelm them, but we do want enough specifics in there so that they know we are not making it up. So, and this is my approach. I know some speakers will make things up, but I am not one of those people. So, use the name of the person. So, whose house was it that you went to in Maine, Pam?
Paul Dalrymple,
So, we went to Paul Dalrymple's house in what Maine? What part of Maine? What was
Port Clyde.
Port Clyde, Maine. So just adding those extra details,
Okay.
how juicy does
I
that,
didn't make that
that
up, yeah.
additional feel to it? So you could even use a couple of names of the speakers,
Okay.
things like that.
Okay.
Next one, you don't have to be the hero of every story. You don't have to be the hero of every story. And there's two ways that I mean that. You can not, that doesn't mean you never are the hero of the story. You can sometimes be the hero of the story, but don't always be the hero. So first way to not be the hero of the story is to make somebody else the hero of the story. So it might be somebody that you learned that important lesson from, or it might be a colleague or a boss that you used to work for. Let them be the hero of the story. And the second way is to tell the story where you don't look so good. So you're vulnerable with the audience, that you're letting them know, yep, I'm human and I make mistakes too, and I learned this lesson because I made this huge mistake. And let me tell you about that huge mistake. Audiences love that, when you're willing to be vulnerable with them and tell them how you messed up. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope that was helpful for you.
Wonderful.
I'm hoping to do a master class on stories for the chapter sometime this year. And do a couple new techniques to generate more stories.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank you so much.
And with that, guys, thank you. That was
We're done.
awesome.